Hello, everybody, and welcome to the live stream. You may recognize a slightly different background. It's actually because we are here in Sofia, Bulgaria, so that's why the background is slightly different. So apologize with this slightly strange colors or whatever. Mark is here. Hello, Mark.
Hello, everyone.
And although I've said I'm going to focus initially on Egypt, we will then get into more kind of general questions as we go along. So just a couple of reminders. If you are here, this is a live stream. So everything that we talk about is driven by the viewers, as it were. So it's actually driven by people watching. So if you're watching this afterwards, you can skip through to the other questions. You skip through the questions, should I say. If you are here live, please write the word question in as big as you can, ideally in capital letters, because that helps me spot them much quicker. So I'm just checking that everything's looking fine here. So let's have a look. It all seems to be going fine. So I've also decreased the quality slightly just because of the Wi-Fi. So I'm going to get stuck into, as I said initially, the questions about the Nile. So I've seen other questions like Cunard and stuff. I will get back to those. So let's get straight stuck into those. So I'll sort of do them a little bit in order. So Warren, hi there, Warren. Thanks for joining as quite often here. Did you attend Sip and Sell? Was it an open bar or did it have a drink menu? So just for everybody to know, on Amber Waterways, they have a thing called Sip and Sail. So with river cruising, so many different cruise lines, they talk about it being all-inclusive, but that what all-inclusive means differs. So what Amber Waterways have is your alcoholic drinks aren't included the whole trip. You get beer and wine at lunch and at dinner. And then they have a thing called Sip and Sail, which is an hour sort of at sundowner time. So Warren, they did have a menu. And what was interesting with the menu, the reason they had a menu is it only had Egyptian brands on. So if somebody wanted, a cocktail made with a gin that wasn't, or excuse me, I'm getting a bit with some sort of drink, alcoholic mixer that wasn't Egyptian, you couldn't have that. So it was an hour long. So you could have most cocktails, you could have beers, but they all had to be Egyptian. One of the things I discovered, by the way, I didn't realize that Egypt had wines, but they had wines. And a lot of the wines were actually made with South African grapes. So there was something like a partnership between the two.
And did people think it was good? Did you, people that are doing the Sip and Sail, were they?
Yeah, I mean, there was one.
Or?
No, they weren't. It was a good question, actually, because there was one I was sitting, and the Sip and Sail would normally be in the lounge, but because those days because we were often moored overnight, in fact, 5 of the 7 nights you're moored overnight, and sometimes during Sip and Sail timing. But on those 7 days, you could do it up on the sun deck, which was the nicest place. And one day I was sitting at the bar there, and there was one woman who was adamant she wanted cocktails made with which they couldn't do, and they basically said no. They were quite good at that. So there was literally one person, I think, I saw of the 70 people that we had. Peter asking the question, hi there, Peter. Now, when you've done Egypt by cruising, do you think this is a destination that could be even better as a traditional destination holiday, or did it actually benefit to be on a cruise? So, Peter, this is a really important question. I feel pretty strongly that you should do it as kind of a river cruise. But what they do, for example, what Amber Waterways did, is we had a couple of days in Cairo, then you head down to Luxor. And if you're going to Egypt because you want to see the sights, because I'll come to if you don't want to see the sights, but if you want to see the sights, I would absolutely do it as a trip. And I was talking a lot to Mark about this because you want to be in a bubble. There is still lots of issues with security. Lots of people ask me about, did I feel safe? And I felt very safe because I was in that bubble. From the minute we arrived, even before we went through immigration, we had someone from Amber Waterways and their partner Wings with us. Every time we were off the ship, we had someone with us, and they would, tell us what we should do, what we shouldn't do. Things like, simple things like, one of the guys that brought binoculars. They were like, do not take binoculars out on any excursion. The police will freak out if you have binoculars, and you could find yourself in trouble because they associate binoculars with suspicious activity. I spoke to the guy, and he was like, don't bring that particular tripod with me, because again it looked kind of suspicious, down to chasing away sometimes vendors when they got a little bit overly
and
friendly.
Was there a lot of that? Because that's what you hear about.
There was. The vendors were pretty. The
tried to give you things to then say.
They'd put something, a scarf on your neck, and they would warn you, don't put anything on you, because then they'll hassle you. But they would warn us about all that sort of stuff. Things like don't take pictures of police. So I would absolutely go within that bubble. They would talk to you about what to do, not what to do. And actually, if you go on that trip, everything that you're going to want to see, you're going to see on the trip. So in Cairo, we went to the museum, we went to the alabaster mosque, the pyramids, the Sphinx. In Luxor, everything you want to see is going to be on the cruise. Now, if you want to go to Egypt for a beach holiday or a diving holiday and you want to go to Sharm el Sheikh, whatever, then that's probably a different story. But I would absolutely go on a cruise. So that's a very good question. So as I said, there's some other questions more general, and I will come back to them, and then we can obviously get Mark diving into many of those. Jerry asking the question, what did you find surprising and not like about your Amur Waterways cruise? So Jerry, I will also, I'm writing some of the scripts around that, but also talking to people on the trip, many people who've been on Amur Waterways cruise. The important thing to know is that all of the cruises that operate in Egypt, of which there are many, there's actually 250 plus ships, even those that are done by Amur Waterways, Uniworld, Viking, they all have to be operated by Egyptians. So all of the crew has to be Egyptian. The cruise, all the cruises are joint ventures with an Egyptian crew and Amur Waterways. So you actually don't get a true Amur Waterways experience. And I came away thinking that in reality, what you need to do is focus on the right itinerary and make sure you go on a line that has, is likely to have some good standards or whatever. So Amur Waterways clearly has some rules and around quality and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't a true Amur Waterways experience as you would have on any of the other places. If Mark and I went, down the Danube or whatever. So overall, I liked it. But I liked it more around the destinations, the Egyptologists, which were amazing. The fact that they had timed, the sites are packed, but they had timed some of it. So we'd get there when most other people had left and stuff like that. So I enjoyed it from that. The food was average. It wasn't brilliant. It wasn't terrible. The ship was nice. It wasn't amazing, that kind of stuff. So let me just jump in. We've got a Proxima 888. I'll bring that up when I get to it. Has left a $40 super chat. I don't know what they're called. What a super Sunday surprise! Thanks for the tips and tricks. So thanks very much for that. So let's have a look at some more Egyptian ones, and then we'll come to other ones. So Chad and Matthew Cruz, good to see you here. What are the advantages of river cruise over a carefully planned land tour? The advantage of the river cruise, Chad and Matthew, is it's very much the same as going on an escorted trip. So, for example, we're here in Sophia, and there's a tour company called Gate One, which many of you may be familiar with. And going on a river cruise is very similar to going on like a Gate One tour. So, like Mark and I have been looking, they've got a list. At 7 o'clock, be here for dinner. Such and such time, we've got a briefing. You need to be here at this time with your passport, here with your time, with your suitcase. Then we're going to be doing this from 8 till 10. A river cruise is very much like going on an escorted tour like that on land. The advantage, obviously, going on a river is, you pack and unpack once, and obviously you're going, in many cases, like on Egypt,
you're having the fun of sailing as well as just going.
Exactly.
Like we were reading some of the Gate One stuff, and there's a lot of time on a coach.
Exactly.
And I guess you're on the river, which feels nicer than being on a coach.
Exactly. So, that's a good point. We were looking at the itinerary that they're doing for Bulgaria, Serbia, and Romania. And there would be a thing like this, 6 or 7 hours on the bus one day. Whereas, of course, if you're doing a river cruise, you're doing that on the beautiful sailing. The sailing parts of the Nile River cruise were fantastic.
And then you're having your dinner as part of your travel time, as opposed to being
exactly. Whereas what Gate One do is they're saying, like, we're going to stop for lunch at such and such a place.
Yeah.
We're going to have rest stops along the way. So that for me will be the one of the key differences. And I will actually do, Chad and Matthew, I'm going to do some more river cruising videos in detail, because a lot of people accuse me of being anti-river cruising because I sort of highlight some of the pros and cons, and people often latch onto the con side. So I will dive into that much more, not just related to Egypt, but more generally. So Heather, hi there, Heather, a very regular here. Heather has a YouTube channel focused on Disney and particularly family travel and family cruising. How hot was it in Egypt? Is there any cooler time of year to go? So I was going in April, which is sort of heading, early spring, heading into summer. So we had in Cairo, it was 28 degrees Celsius to sort of 30 degrees Celsius. I never know what that's in Fahrenheit. It's almost 100 or something, I guess, heading towards 100. I don't know. It's like
Up
late
to
80s to
90,
90s.
yeah.
Once we got down to Luxor, it's much hotter. So we were having days of around about 35 degrees Celsius, which I guess is 100 degrees. Now, if you head more into the summer, it can be up to 35 to 40 degrees. It's it's a very dry heat. So I actually quite like
love
it.
the heat.
I love the heat. So I didn't mind it at all. But they actually stopped sailing in July because it's just too hot to sail, and also then do their maintenance of ships and stuff. So the time to go is sort of more their winter. So I guess when it's sort of winter our time, it's a good time to go there. Those would be the slightly cooler times. But it's hot kind of all year round. So, just curiosity, good to see you here. How was the Nile River cruise? What were your favorite bits? Any you'd do differently? So it's good. I'm glad you asked that, because actually in the video script of writing, I'm doing a little bit around the best bits and the kind of the inverted commas worst bits, although there was really a worst bit, which I will save for the video. But so the favorite bits were absolutely and utterly the sites. And I was talking to Mark about that. Mark was probably less, Mark didn't come with me on the Egypt cruise, and as I was posting all the sites, he was a little bit like, "Oh my God, that looks so boring." A little bit, because it's sort of like it was tomb after tomb.
It's
just
too much of it, in my view.
Yeah, it's tomb after tomb. So you need to be very into wanting to see tombs and temples and things. So if that's not your thing, then it's not going to be a favorite thing. For me, the absolute favorite thing was seeing Abu Simbel, which I'd always wanted to see since I was about 10 when they originally moved it. So they had to move it 62 meters up and 200 meters across, because when they built Lake Nasser Dam, the water was rising and it would have swallowed it. And they've moved and they've created what looks like a mountain, but you approach from behind and you realize it's a created structure. So Abu Simbel was absolutely the most wonderful thing. And in fact, the thumbnail for this live stream is a picture of Abu Simbel. We went to another thing called the Philae Temple, which is where they'd also moved it from one island to another. And it's hard to imagine this was moved, because they split into thousands of.
When was this they were moving?
In the 60s. A good point. So it was all done in the 60s when they built the dam. So all those kind of temples, Valley of the Kings, Valley of the Kings, that was the favorite thing. Anything I'd do differently, I probably would. I might have gone on a different line, perhaps. I might have gone on Viking or whatever, maybe. But as I said a little bit earlier, if you heard a bit earlier, the line becomes much less important. So let me have ton of tube. So Tony saying food on Amways was just okay. I've had great food. I thought it was just okay on this trip. So let's have a quick look. If not, I'm going to dive into some other questions. So Jean, cruising the Nile in 2025, Viking. I saw the Viking ship. It looks very beautiful. What did you find as a must-do in Cairo? To be honest, Ama Waterways had done the must-do things. The pyramids and the Sphinx is obviously a must-do. The Alabaster Monastery, which was a big surprise, was really a must-do. And then we had a thing which I don't think Viking do, but Ama Waterway do, where we had, on coming back, we had lunch in the Aberdeen Palace, which used to be the Royal Palace, which was just absolutely amazing. Here we go. So Ken asking, you had an issue with your cabin. How was customer service on board when resolving issues? So those people who don't know, is my cabin used all my usual rules, as Mark knows, no cabin above, below, either side, no interconnecting door. So I did all that. And that got me into cabin, which was a little bit near the front, because a lot of them were interconnecting cabins. But what happens in the Nile is, when you do river cruising, as you know, ships normally dock side by side, so you often have to walk through. But in the Nile, because it's so busy, they also dock, in front of each other, in front of each other, in front of each other. Now in Europe, because when they're docked, they actually plug into shoreside power, so the engines are switched off, and so you don't have this issue. In the Nile, they don't have that. So the ships, which are kind of noisy diesel engines, run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So you have all these ships parked in front of you. So if you're in the front, you have this unbelievable noise of engines all night. And the first night I just couldn't sleep. I actually made a little bed in the bathroom. I luckily had a cabin which had a big enough bathroom. And you docked pretty much every night on a Nile River cruise. Luckily, we didn't have ships in front of us in some of the other nights. On the last night, I had the same problem because we were back in Luxor. I managed to actually just sort of sleep a little bit through it all. Customer
I couldn't have been there with you like that.
No, but you wouldn't be able to sleep. You
would have been a nightmare.
I would have been an absolute nightmare. So in terms of customer service, they couldn't really do anything because the ship was full. So they did try to time. Actually, they were quite good. They did try to time. They did go and check. Like they told me, okay, we're back in Luxor one night. There's definitely no ship in front of us. So they did try a little bit to minimize it, but they basically said it's Egypt, and that's all we can do. But they were sympathetic, but also, as I discussed, it's an issue that's known. So people send me a message. The very best cabins are right in the front of the ship, and people send me a message saying we're really excited. We've booked the cruise for next year. We've booked the best cabins, which is in the front. And my advice to them is don't change from the front, because they will have it even worse. Because I was a little bit buffered because I was on the side. So let's ask a quick question of you, and then we'll jump back and go to some more general questions. Question for Mark, which Chris is asking: will you be on any of the group cruises? So for those who don't know, there's 2 group cruises, one of which is in April, which is for channel members and patrons. So become a patron if you want to do that in the Caribbean. And then there's another one in September, which is on Celebrity Eclipse, Boston to Boston, Canada and New England. So will you be coming?
So no, probably not is the answer at the moment. I mean, a number of reasons, mainly work. Only work really, just because the timing is not good for me, just because of the things that are going on at work and just having enough holiday to do these. And we have a couple of other things that we are definitely doing in 23, 24 anyway. So at the moment, I don't think I am, unless anything changes. So no, I would like to, but no.
No, unfortunately, so unless you win the lottery, I guess.
Unless I win the lottery. If I win the lottery, then that would be great. Yeah,
so
no, I'll definitely be there.
Proximate, thank you very much, as I've already mentioned, for that super sticker. And Liz, thank you very much also for your super sticker. That's very kind of you. Liz is also one of the channel members, so it's very kind of you. So let's sort of go back a little bit, and if more now questions come up, I will do those. So here's some very formal Catherine. You don't have to call me Mr. Bembridge, but that's very nice.
I have to.
Actually, as I decided, one of the things that's quite interesting, as we mentioned, we're in Sofia for kind of the long weekend break. And often when I'm on cruises and stuff, I meet people. But the first night we were here, we went to the lounge downstairs, and Debbie, who lives in Bulgaria, was actually also staying at the hotel. And it was really bizarre because they came and said, hello, Gary, hello, Mark, because they watch the lives a lot. So hello, Debbie, if you're watching the live, listen to the live. And it was kind of slightly surreal being like so inland or whatever. Anyway, Catherine, can you mention any differences between the new Cunard Queen Anne ocean liner and the Queen Elizabeth and Queen Mary II? Is it better? So I can answer that, which is
answer it better than me.
So it's different to both of them, because Queen Anne is going to be a pinnacle class ship. So it's basically a class of ship, a designer ship that is currently used by Holland America. They created with the pinnacle class. So things like New Statendam, the Rotterdam class. So it's that. Queen Elizabeth is a Vista class ship. So things like, again, Holland America, New Amsterdam, which we've been on, is a Vista class ship. Or if you go on P&O Arcadia, which we've also been on, is also a Vista class ship. Queen Mary II is a once-off liner design. So it's very different.
So is that right, that it is an ocean liner, or is it a cruise ship, the Queen Anne?
Queen Anne is going to be a cruise. It's a good
point.
Queen
Mary II is the ocean liner.
So the only one of those three that's an ocean liner is Queen Mary II, because of the design of the hull, etc. So Queen Anne will be a cruise ship. Good point. Well, so it will be a cruise ship. Will it be better? It will be different. It will also have, from what we've seen so far with the drawings, it's going to be a slightly different, slightly more modern take, as it were. And it will have the usual things, Britannia, Queen's Grill, Princess Grill, Queen's Room, and so on. So we will be able to tell you more in May 2024. Comes into service early May. It was sailed out this week. And we're on the second cruise that it's going to be. It has made, and then we're on the second one. So we'll be able to tell you more if it's better. It will certainly be different.
It's going to be very interesting, because it does look quite different from what we've seen, doesn't it? I mean, as you say, it's going to be the same format, but style-wise, it looks quite different. So it'll be interesting to see. Yes. I'm a big fan of Cunard, so it'll be interesting to see what it's like.
So we actually went on, because Mark hadn't been on a pinnacle class ship. So at Christmas time, we went on a Pinnacle class ship, the West Koningsdam. So you also then, Mark, will be able to compare a little bit of how the internal layout and stuff for when that comes into place. Catherine, a question dear to my heart, a follow-on question is, can you tell the difference between high T and low T? I'm assuming it's business style. So Catherine, no, that's not the case. So basically, in the US particularly, they would call afternoon tea high tea. Now, strictly speaking, if you look at the history of afternoon tea and high tea, what people would argue is afternoon tea was originally created by the Duchess of Bedford, I think it was. She got packaged in the late afternoon. So she created this thing where they had little sandwiches and scones and cakes to basically tie them over till they had dinner in the evening. Now, high tea originally was what you would have if you were a workman coming back from the fields or whatever, and you would basically come back starving at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. So you would have more of a high tea, which would basically kind of be a dinner kind of thing, but you might have another thing later. And it's sort of high tea sort of become merged with afternoon tea as wording. So it's not about dress at all. It's really timing. And there is no such thing as
Brit, we would call it afternoon tea, but a lot of Americans, I think, would call it high tea. Maybe.
So you'll find it's very, you find in the US they tend to call it's, even in parts of Europe they call it high tea. In the UK you would call it afternoon tea, and it's more. There is no such thing as low tea. In high tea, afternoon tea. The dress code will depend kind of where you go.
It just depends on where you are. Yeah.
Like I take my mum often for afternoon tea. We'll just wear whatever. But we're going.
But if you go to the Ritz and have afternoon tea,
then you have to wear a jacket
and a tie.
And a tie. Whereas on Cunard, you can wear shorts and flip-flops if you want to. Mitzi crafts with friends. How do you afford to cruise solo on luxury lines? Is there a secret for price reductions? Mitzi, the key thing is, it's two things. One of which is a couple of the luxury lines. In fact, many of the luxury lines, particularly Silver Sea, Ponant do it, Regent less so, Seabourn less so. They will run promotions at various times of the year where they'll have low solar supplements, so maybe 10%, 20%. So the two Antarctic trips I've done, one with Silver Sea and one with Ponant, I went at the time of the year when they had those. And so things like Silver Sea have a little tab, which is called Solo Deals. And then it's also following some sites, and I have a video. So if you ever look on the channel for solo travel, there I talk about the different sites, which will sometimes have specific promotions or partnerships with solo travel. And Vacations to Go will often list promotions, although they tend not to have luxury ones.
And some will have solo cabins, right? But often they're not.
Yeah.
But often they're not.
As
cheap as sometimes you get another cabin as cheap.
But if you go with the luxury, so if you go with ultra luxury, if you go Seabourn, Silver Sea, they don't have solo cabins.
Right.
But the sort of the more small ship luxury like Oceania, they're starting to introduce solo cabins. And you're right, the premium ones, like Holland America, they're all starting to
have some on some.
Cunard have some. Princess don't have any solo. So that's how I do it. And then the other thing is at the moment I use pretty much all the money that I make on YouTube goes to cruising. So obviously Taxman takes what they take, and then so I do. But in reality, if Mark was able to travel through much more, it would cost the same. So I haven't found a magic way to do it. But what I try and do, particularly with the ultra luxury lines where the premium is so huge, I will focus on those lower surcharge.
So when I retire, my aim is just to pay the difference. Obviously, Gary can carry on paying the rest, and I'll just pay the tiny bit extra. So
that's the
plan.
That's the plan. Okay, Claudia, of the antiquities region / cruises destinations, you're saying that I know what you mean. What do you suggest is the number one bucket list of choice? I mean, Egypt is probably is probably number one just in terms of the scale of what you're seeing. But I mean, so that would be number one. But in terms of more accessible, or say, I guess the Mediterranean.
Some of the Greece.
Greece, so you've got it like Greece. But if you're going like we've done to Florence, Rome, those are pretty spectacular in terms of the kind of antiquities side. I mean, even parts of Turkey. We haven't done a lot of Turkey, but what's it? Oh, no, I've gone. It's gone. We went to the concert on Seabourn.
I know, yeah.
Ephesus. So all that Greek kind of region, so going to, Olympia from Katakolon, All those are pretty fascinating. So I would say those are probably.
I mean, the Greece one's nice because you maybe have a bit of a mix. You have some of that and some other that isn't like that.
Absolutely. So let's have a look. So Tony, I'm going on a Holland America Scandinavian cruise. Very nice. I did that last year. What excursions do you recommend for Norway, Sweden, Denmark, and Finland? Well, that's quite a big question. I mean, Norway, I would always say anything that gets you either up high. So, if you can splash out to some of the helicopter excursions, which, you get the panorama, you get to see some of the glaciers, not many glaciers that you get to see other than up high. Or what we've done sometimes in Norway is some of the RIB, the boat tours are amazing. RIBs, if that's not your thing, but like out of Stavanger, you can do things like, it's up to the Liza Fjord. There's like a little boat trip, which is not that crazy. Let me think in terms of Sweden. It depends where you're going, really. In Sweden, I'm trying to think if there's any hot tips I've got for Sweden, Denmark, and Finland. I don't have any really hot tips for those as such, other than the Norway one. Finland, if you're going to Helsinki, it's the one place where I wouldn't recommend the hop-on-off bus. Remember we went on a hop-on-off bus and we were bored with it, so about a little while in. So it's one of the few places that a hop-on-off bus doesn't make sense. But in most of the places, it's around kind of getting out into the countryside or the fjords, I would say. Heather, yes. Short answer, yes. The cruise prices have spiraled. I mean, I'll use the Cunard example. So we did the crossing in May. I did a Mediterranean. We then were looking like the Queen Anne, which is next year, is about 30% higher. And I know it's a new ship and stuff, but I was even looking about, because the crossing is always something that we keep an eye on. And even then, that's like a 20% increase. So this absolutely, prices are very high. And and it's interesting because we've seen both Norwegian this week, was it last week, in their update to Wall Street. They spoke about they're now tracking 100% or 101% occupancy, and Royal Caribbean the same. Now, last year, we were seeing close to 100% in the Caribbean, but it was like 50, 60% in the Mediterranean. So those ships are now selling full, basically. They're selling the ships. So the prices are going up and up. Sherry, the short answer again is no. In terms of last minute cruises, there's not necessarily more deals. What you may find is a little bit linked to Heather's question. Because ships are selling full, those last minute deals are becoming fewer, and certainly the deep deals are becoming much fewer than they were. You might find it's less that it's you might find still on very popular places like the Caribbean or something, you might find that it's still cheap even though you're paying the higher premium, but much less so than it was in the past.
And Gary has to plan everything, so the idea of him doing a last minute thing
in reality, Sherry, what I found now, it's gone back to where actually booking very far in advance, you're more likely to lock in a lower price. And so as you know, I advocate tracking fares. So for pretty much all of my cruises, I track them, and on my website I have an article there. If you go to the website tipsfortravelers.com, look at most popular articles, you'll see how to track fares, because there's 3 sites that you can use. And I used to get, since lockdown, almost every cruise I went on, I got a notification of fares coming down, and I would then try and get discount or onboard credit. I'm now getting pretty much consistently, your fares have gone up.
It also depends if you've got to add a flight, then probably last minute flights.
That's a huge issue. So that's a huge issue. And I think Heather might have mentioned that somewhere else before, where often the increase in the flights, the flight price will negate a lot of that.
I mean, we were looking at some last minute flights a while ago, and they were just crazy prices. Like last minute flights just don't work, I think.
Yeah, we were looking. I mean, we were thinking one time, I think you're right, not to a cruise destination. We were looking at Vegas, and it was going to cost, last minute flight was like £10,000 or something, something literally bizarre like that. So let's have a look. Are you cruised out now, Barb? Not yet. A lot more cruises done. Said, are you cruised out? No. Funny, you were asking me this. You're asking me because, well, as you're saying, like when Mark sort of retires, the idea would be he wants to do many more trips. And he was like, oh, he was saying, I'm really worried that while you retire, whenever it is, a year or a year and a half, whatever it is, stop working full time. And I was like, I don't think so. I haven't. I mean, I was at home.
But it would be different as well. It would be a different way of doing it, maybe. But I mean, I was asking Gary because, you know, he literally got back from Egypt, had a day. We came here. He's back for 10 days afterwards and then going again. And I was asking the same question, like, but I think at the moment you're enjoying it and therefore carry on doing it is great. But so I think no is the answer. And I'm not sure you will get to that.
No, I mean, I think it's because this when I look at my schedule, as Mark said, like plans so far ahead, is there's many destinations that I haven't been to that I'm going to, or I'm going back to a destination that I wasn't doing much YouTube channels. I was doing more podcasts, like Japan, for example. I'm very excited because I can finally get to like do YouTube reviews. The thing that I find, Bob, to your question, what is the toughest thing? Obviously, being home and planning it is always challenging, but actually, it's keeping up. You know, planning ahead. Like even on this trip, like on the fly, I'm like, I need to write this script because I need to get this done because I need to cover when I'm away and blah blah blah.
It's having enough time to do the work.
To do the work in between, because you know when you're on a cruise, I'm filming a lot and then I'm making notes and sorting out the video. So it's actually finding the time. Like I know I've got so many days back next week, and then I'm going to see my mum and to get everything done before I go on the next trip. So you don't get.
I think it's true. Like although clearly what you do is great. Like Gary works really hard as well, and actually the time that you're at home. Like if I'm working at home, you're working at least the same time that I'm working. And so, yeah, there's a lot to do in between trips.
Yeah, exactly. Which is also about making choices, like, you know, trying to decide not to do. So Richard, not a question, but I want to say, like your approach of ads, hosted or paid stuff, well done. Thank you very much. Well, it's largely thanks to all the people here, because in reality, I made the decision that I would try and make the channel, you know, so that the people that were key was the viewers. So the viewers pay for me to do what I do. You know, there's another approach you can go
by just watching.
By just watching, yeah, or becoming a channel member or whatever, but mostly through watching. So from the ad revenue. So watching, you know, and watching. So the more people watch, the more I can keep doing it. And obviously different models. You can decide do you want to go more where you take invited trips. I get invited on a lot of trips and I say no to them. I think I worked at there's 11 that have been asked on in the last 12 months and things like that. Eric is asking the question about the drinks package, if you like specialty drinks over alcohol. So I guess by specialty drinks, Eric, I assume you mean like coffees and things like that. If you like specialty drinks, like if it's really about coffees, not alcohol, there are some pretty good deals. So I, you know, as most people know, I don't drink alcohol, but what I will do if it's not included as part of a promotion or something, I do look at sometimes getting the specialty drinks package, because you know, if you're on even 2 coffees a day, you know, or coffees and hot chocolates, those tend to be quite good value. So those tend to be, but I would buy that very specific package, because if you buy it as a bigger drinks package, like for me, it's a complete waste of money, because even if I have the odd Heineken Zero or whatever.
Kind of mocktails have become a bit much more of a thing now. So I don't know whether they're catering for that
well,
or
they
not
are,
really at the moment.
Because you can, that's a good point, because you can buy on many cruise lines, you can buy now a non-alcoholic drinks package, which the mocktails, so that'll include like mocktails, obviously soft drinks, Heineken Zeros. And it's going to be interesting because more and more, I mean, we see more and more, you know, this non-alcoholic gins, cocktails and things. So those are starting to grow. They seem to have those less so on the cruise line, but I guess that will change.
They'll catch up, I think.
They will catch up. Right, so making the point about, you know, on the Penant Antarctica cruise supplement, but it's more because they choose certain cruises. Like when I went on Penant, it was like that. Bethany, love your videos, thank you very much. We're a young family traveling on the Norwegian Getaway in July, which is a very nice ship. We're visiting Istanbul during our trip. Is it safe, or should we go with a cruise excursion? Personally, Bethany, I would tend to, in Turkey, go with a cruise line excursion. You know, Turkey, Istanbul is not renowned. Well, it's a little bit so-so-y, not massively, but I would certainly in any of those places stick with a cruise line excursion would be my tip.
I mean, Istanbul is such a huge place
as well,
and therefore actually a planned trip to know to know the way around and where they're going is probably a sensible
Yeah,
one.
and it's certainly if I was going to Istanbul, I think if we were going to Istanbul, like I would do. That is one place I would do. I would stick with cruise line excursions. So,
Yeah.
so that would be the thing I would do. Champers and chandeliers, love it. I assume it's champers and then swing on chandeliers, maybe, I don't know. Best first-time cruise for mid-40s couple, 10th anniversary trip. Would like a bit of nightlife. Would love to dress up a night or two as well as possible. So champers and chandeliers a little bit depends on your budget. I would probably say if you want to splash out a little bit, I would look at something like a Seabourn. Because that, particularly if it's a 10th anniversary, it's going to be very upmarket, very premium. I mean, it's not people tend to dress relatively smart. Then it's not as formal as say a Cunard, but
not nightlife though.
No, that's the thing. So,
but what about a Virgin?
Yeah, that was going to be my second thing. Is so then you're going to be more on the sort of pampering yourself. Virgin would be a good one to look at because it's not massively dressy, but it is quite trendy. So people do dress kind of trendy, and they do have the parties. They have the Scarlet Night party. They have the Pajama Night party. There's almost some sort of party every night, and around the ship it's a bit more buzzy. So I would probably look at that. The average age actually on a Virgin trip is around about 50 or so. So it's a little bit younger. It's not as young as many people think it is. It is, so it's probably quite a nice I
mean, depending on when I'm not sure where they are, but even a like a P&O, if you're traveling from the UK, would have it allows to be a little bit dressy if you want it to be a little bit. I'm just thinking my sister, who is slightly older than that, but she went on it and she really liked the P&O vibe. There was kind of enough to do, and I would be
if you go on P&O, I would focus on their new ships though. Yes. Iona or a Viva, I always call it Viva, and it's not a Viva, a Riva. I would go on their new ships, which are a little bit more buzzy in terms of nightlife and stuff. The older ships tend to be more family orientated, and I would tend to also not go at holiday time if you are out of the UK. Just linking back to this is a question I got asked a lot. So Wu-Tang Life. Was this a land and river cruise combined, or did you have to pay for excursions? So thanks for asking that, because I keep forgetting to talk about this because a lot of people ask me this. So basically, what the river cruise lines have done is it's a combined. So they call it something like Egyptian highlights or something. I can't even remember what the full title was called. And so you have the Cairo part, because you kind of have to fly into Cairo, particularly if you're flying internationally. You fly into Cairo anyway. There's a couple, I know, like from the UK, there's some charter package flights, which was a charter flight into Luxor. But you basically, so you spend some time in Cairo on a land-based thing. You then fly as a group to Luxor and do the river cruise part. So it's about a 10 or 11 night. All the excursions are included for the key sites. The only two extra excursions that were not included that we did have to pay extra for. One was the one to Abu Simbel out of Aswan. That's about an hour flight, although it actually can take 20 minutes. So that's not included. That was about $350. But there were 70 people on the trip and 63 people did it. So it almost felt like that. And secondly, afternoon tea at the Old Cataract Hotel, which is where a beautiful old hotel where people like Agatha Christie stayed when she wrote Death on the Nile. So it's a very beautiful old colonial hotel. That was extra. Afternoon tea was extra. That was $50. But everything else was included. And that is kind of the norm for those river cruising. Most of them do include that kind of.
So that was an Amur Waterways.
That was Amur Waterways, but Viking does it. Uniworld does it. The afternoon tea specifically.
No. I mean the whole thing.
The whole thing.
It was an Amur Waterways trip. It wasn't a trip.
Exactly. No, exactly. So if you booked a Viking one or a Uniworld one or many of the other names, the thing I would say, by the way, is if you are looking at it, make sure that whatever the combination includes a 7-night river cruise. There are some little permutations that will do a 3-night and a 4-night, but it's just too rushed and you actually miss some of the key sites. So that would be my other way. Norma Smith saying, hello, Mark.
Booked cruise as well. Nice.
Booked a cruise. Okay. Magali, do you recommend Amur Waterways over other river cruise, over other companies? So Magali, it depends a little bit in where you're cruising. So within Europe, I think they are fantastic. And they're kind of sort of like a 5-star-y kind of thing. Above them, you've probably got like Uniworld, Scenic, which are probably a little bit more expensive. Would argue they're a little bit more sort of 6-star, because they could call them 6-star, as it were. And then you've probably got, Viking. I think Viking's kind of in Europe is more 4-star. They're argue 5-star. You've got Avalon and Emerald and that sort of stuff there. I like AMA Waterways in Europe. I think they're very slick operators. They have beautiful ships. I think their food normally I've had in Europe is good. We had some experience from Tony, but earlier. So I think they are a really good combination, because river cruising is quite expensive, but they are pretty good. I think once, as I said earlier, if you were here earlier, once it comes to Egypt, because you don't get the true experience, I think it's a little bit different. I went to the Mekong, for example. I went across Europe, which was fantastic. They're a little bit cheaper than that. They have smaller ships. But they know the region really well. But if I was doing it again, I might consider going on AMA there. I think what's interesting and discovering out of Europe, where they are basically partnerships, it's understanding how much of the true AMA experience you're going to get. I think is key. But yes, I do rate them very highly. I actually have a video. I think I have a video which is called "The Best Cruise Lines," where I get into that in much more detail. Cheryl asking a question: do you have a paper with a list of all of your suggested websites? Second question: how long in advance do you suggest to book ahead on your cruising? Okay, so Cheryl, I have actually a video which came out a couple of weeks ago, which was something about the key sort of, I call them secret weapons, where there I list all of those, and in the description there I list all those, and there is a blog post which then includes those as well. So it's not a paper list as such, but it's kind of a digital list, as it were. Then I have a video coming out next week where I talk about the ones that I use in the run-up to a cruise. So there's kind of 2 sets, if you like, one of which is more general ones around researching cruises and that kind of stuff. The other one, which is that I use to plan sites like what's in port and things like that. So, but what I should probably do, to your point, which is a great idea, is actually, maybe I'll put as a little tab. I should write this as a note to myself. I'll write that as a note, Cheryl, why I do it, is I probably should have a paper of where I list all my kind of cruise resources. So maybe I'll do that. I'll do a little tab on the website called Cruise Resource something. So thanks very much. So in terms of the booking ahead, Cheryl, if you heard a little discussion earlier, as
early as you can.
I think early as you can is key. If you are as fussy as I am, either because if there's a very specific itinerary you want to go at a very specific time of year on a very specific ship in a very specific cabin, the further ahead the better, because you can choose all of those down to the exact detail, the exact cabin you want, and you will normally get the best price.
So can I ask a question on that? So if you've done that and you see prices have gone down,
yes.
I mean, I think the answer is often you can speak to the cruise line and you may get an upgrade. They may do something about it. Is that right or not?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I talk about quite a lot is fare tracking. So again, that thing I was mentioning earlier, there's three sites that you use. So you can input there and track, and if it goes down, if you've booked through a travel agent, which is actually, I always recommend anyway, it's easy because you can ask your travel agent to do it. Is the travel agent won't necessarily track all the fares, because bear in mind they might have hundreds of clients or whatever, so they can't track all the fares. But if you notice it's gone down, if you haven't paid the final balance, Cheryl, what you can then do is you can then contact the cruise line or get your travel agent and say, look, I noticed the fare for my cabin's gone from 100 to 80. I would like the difference, please. And if they say no, because whatever, then you say, okay, well, I want onboard credit or I want an upgrade. So I've done it various different permutations. We've been on Cuno before, where the fare's gone down and we've got upgraded to a better cabin. I got $1,600 back on a Azamara trip last year. I've been upgraded on others.
I mean, and often deposits can be quite low. So actually, if there was a huge difference in the fare, then it could be better to cancel and lose your deposit and rebook.
Exactly. But so for example, like Mark and his best friend, although not really going to be doing it anymore, but they booked a Norwegian cruise to Alaska, and the deposit was $100 or £90 or something.
Yeah.
But actually, if the fares dropped by $300 and it is a non-refundable deposit, they would still save money by rebooking, because they would also cancel and rebook and get almost the same cabins. So the short answer is I tend to book way in advance, to get that. In the post shutdown time, there were more deals going. But they are getting fewer and fewer and fewer. So Asia's Curiosity, good to see you. So generally speaking, although I tend not to cruise in the Middle East, it's sort of, I hadn't really thought about it in Egypt, but many of the countries in the Middle East I'm we're a little bit uncomfortable with, because they are, in many cases, LGBT is illegal there. So actually going to countries where breaking the law is not something we're very keen on. So actually in Egypt, it's not illegal being gay, but there was lots of reports of lots of harassment and entrapment and stuff by police and stuff. So we tended to sort of avoid it. So I would like to go to places like cruise around some of that part, because I would like to do the Suez Canal. But I would theoretically like to do a cruise that goes through the Suez Canal. Would be the answer. I would really like to do that. Norma recently booked Oceania with Gary Pluck for 2024. Thanks for referral. So great to hear that. I've had lots of people. So Gary Pluck is, obviously in the UK, I use Sarah Bolton, travel counselors, and that's who I recommend, because I really like the work she does and have lots of good feedback on her, and she does great stuff for me. In the US, Gary Pluck, who follows the channel, who may or may not be here, he's often here. So I've had a lot of people say nice things about him, and I've had a couple of emails actually just in the last week or two, people liking Gary Pluck. So that's a good option. So great to hear. And Oceania is, of course, one of my favorite lines. Let's have a look. So Bethany, I think we answered this. No, we answered a different question for you. We're traveling on a Norwegian cruise line with our young kids. I prefer premium lines prior to children, but felt this would be better for them. Will it be packed with kids? We're going before summer, 2 weeks before summer holidays. Bethany, it will be packed with kids in the holiday time normally. The thing to watch out for, of course, is different countries and have slightly different holiday periods. So you often find, you were going, I guess, on a Mediterranean cruise. So you may find that even though it's 2 weeks before holidays, wherever you are, I don't know where you are, UK or US, whatever, but around the school holiday times, there's lots of flex. So sometimes you think you're not going on school holiday time, and there is a lot of school holiday. But Norwegian generally is very popular with families. But if you go out of school holiday time, you may find no kids on board. But there may be a lot of kids. But of course, your kids will absolutely love it if there's lots of kids, because it means the kids clubs will be busy and buzzing and lots of friends. So they will absolutely love it. And the kids clubs in Norwegian are fantastic. Michelle is actually on the Viking Sky in Aegean Sea. So I hope you're having a great time. Viking Sky was the one I was on when I did my last one.
Yeah, it's nice.
Carol, watching from Facebook. When you're in Cairo, do you think it's a no guide, no go type of city? Is there anything near the Four Seasons that would be of interest? We're arriving a day early. I would probably go with a guide. I personally wouldn't feel comfortable strolling around. I mean, years ago, went to Cairo and we just hired a taxi driver, but there's so many scams and rip-offs and stuff. I would tend to focus with the guide. Now, if you're going on Amur Waterways, it depends who you're going with. So there's 2 Four Seasons in Cairo. There's the Four Seasons of the First Residence, which is the one that Amur Waterways use, and there's the Four Seasons Cairo, I think it's called, which is where I know Uniworld do, because Richard and Helen, who went on Uniworld last year, stayed there. Certainly at the First Residence, other than the zoo, there's a zoo directly opposite, which is closed on Tuesdays. There is the zoo right across the way, which I had conflicting views about. Our main cruise manager said it was awful, and other people said it was great. But I would tend to, and there's nothing around there. There's not a lot around there at all to do other than the zoo. But I would tend to have a guide, really.
Enjoy the swimming pool.
Or enjoy the swimming pool. The swimming pool is quite nice, actually. Bethany, I can't remember all the special restaurants at Gateway, but the great thing, one of the tips I always have in Norwegian is the teppanyaki, where they have the big, it's the Japanese, I guess, and they have the big, massive big hot plates, and they do because the chefs are very entertaining, and they'll spin things around and all that stuff. That's the one that I remember. So Sherry, just about the point is they have, other than Sip and Sail, they have like European or American spirits, it's only at sip and sail. So you can, get those classic, well-known brands.
I mean, often they are a certain brand and not the whatever they call them, superior brands anyway on a package, aren't they? It depends on the package, but some.
Yeah, I mean, they had on Amber Waters, they had most of the well-known brands. There was a few really premium brands like wines, for example. Like on wines, the only included wines were Egyptian wines, even at the time. Willerton Life, there was single supplement, it was double, and that's pretty true on most of the cruises. They only have, like, there was 2 solo travelers on my trip. I was one. Another lady called Jen was another. Both of us paid the full whack because there is only 72. What's half of 72? 30, whatever. 36. There's only 36 cabins, so they want they want the full fare for each of those, and that's true pretty much of all river cruises. A few are starting to introduce solo cabins, but it's very, very hard to find solo deals on any river cruise. So here's a question for Mark.
On the typical cruise line, more important to destinations. Yeah, it definitely is for me, actually. I mean, there are going to be certain destinations I would want to go to, but certainly for me, the cruise line, and you're right, sometimes even more specifically, the ship is more important. When people ask me, there was someone I worked with was planning a multi-generational trip for her family for her dad's 70th birthday, and my point first was think about the cruise line that you want, because I think that is most important. But that relates to how much do you want to dress up for dinner? How much do you want it to be for the kids versus other people? For me personally, there are certainly a few cruise lines that I love, and I would probably look to say, are they going to a destination that I want to go to, rather than look at the destination first and then look at the various cruise lines. So yes, I agree with you, Peter.
I mean, there is very few destinations where you don't have a choice of cruise lines, I guess. So, so I mean, if you go to Galapagos or something like that, but most, if you go in the Mediterranean, you can normally find I'm just saying, because you like Cunard, the struggle with Cunard is Cunard has relatively limited destinations. So the advantage, of course, hopefully with Queen Anne, is that will change. So, if you want to go to Alaska, Queen Anne goes there, like Bob and Holly with Innocents Abroad are going there, but they only do 3 or 4. I don't know the exact numbers, I don't comment now, but they only do a very short Alaskan season. But if you wanted to go around South America, they go once a year as part of a major voyage, whereas Holland America Princess do it multiple times. So that's the challenge where it limits you a bit.
But but the point is, it's more about the whole experience rather than just the destination. So actually, the cruise ship, an example was at Christmas, we actually went on a cruise line that maybe I wasn't so keen on going on, but it was going to the destination that we went to.
Yeah.
And that was fine, but actually, and it was fine. I think that was the answer. It was fine, and we had a nice time. But actually, a different cruise line makes a huge amount of difference to me.
Yeah, I think it's true, because if you remember, I asked the question at the end, which I talked about in the video actually, is would you rather have gone for a slightly shorter time on Cunard versus a slightly longer time on Holland America, which was the choice?
Yeah.
And your point was if it was the same destination, you would absolutely prefer to go for the 7 nights on Cunard. It was a destination that you really wanted to go to, but Cunard didn't go. It was fine.
Yeah, and you spend a lot of time on the ship, and depending on when you're going, all of that is important to me. Yeah.
Another question for Bethany. A lot of questions for Bethany. Which of the luxury lines is best for going with young children? I personally wouldn't recommend going with kids on luxury ship, partly because it's going to cost you a lot of money. There's going to be no kids facilities. There's going to be very unlikely to be other kids for them to play with. And actually, the passengers kind of hoping that it's an adult experience, so it's less good. When I say luxury, I'm talking about your Seabourns, your Silver Seas, Penants, and so on. Even your next level, Oceania, Windstar, it is very much more an adult experience. They don't cater for kids, and they consciously don't have kids clubs and kids programs, largely speaking. So I wouldn't tend to go. I sometimes
there's a balance between what you want and what your kids want there, I suppose, isn't it? It depends how much you want it to be for the kids or for you to enjoy as much. But I agree. Again, that was a question that someone I worked with was asking me. It was multi-generational, and it was, which bit is most important? Is it all about your kids doing everything they want to do, or is it about the broader group? And it depends, I guess.
Yeah, I would tend to, because obviously if your kids aren't having a good time, I guess you're not going to have a good time. I don't know if you've got kids, but I would tend not not to. It seems a very expensive. It is a very expensive option when there's other ships. Even the premium ships. Obviously Norwegian is one, but even like such lines like Princess are sort of trying to become more family friendly. So there may be a good compromise if you want a bit more adulty stuff. But I think you'll find Norwegian is a good compromise for both the adults and the kids. Darren asking the question: is it the norm for embarkation night to offer discounted special dining? I'll be on Celebrity Apex soon. Is the offer on the app or only when you get on board? So Darren, it varies a little bit. I'm trying to remember offhand on Celebrity if they did the discount on the first night. I don't think they did.
I mean, it's often a lot easier to get a table than it is on some of the
It's a lot easier, but many of the lines I've been on, like Princess and Holland America, I think they did. I can't remember offhand, unfortunately, Darren. So it's not the norm, is the short answer to the question. If they do offer a discount, it will tend to be when you get on board. You see that is when I've picked it up mostly. Liz has just received great news. Liz has just received cruise documents for the 2025 Ford's cruise.
Love it.
That's very exciting. And Liz, I think you've asked me a few questions on that before through members, which is good. Janet, do you feel there's a lot of risk of river cruise ships not being able to travel due to water levels? Water levels is obviously a massive issue on rivers. I mean, even on the Nile, I know there's some points when on the Nile that could be an issue even, but generally it absolutely is, and it's high and low. So it's I've been on a number of European river cruises where it's an issue. I've been on the Mekong where it's been an issue, absolutely. So it's always, you've got to factor that in. Now, because the distances are quite short, I mean, even though we were sailing the Nile, we were sailing for 12 hours, but we were only going like 70 miles. In fact, on this trip, the bus was always the same bus and the same driver, because the bus would basically drive. And we were sailing, I think one distance was maybe, I think it was something like 24 miles. So by road, it was maybe 30 miles. It had taken him an hour or something, an hour and a half or something to drive there. And it had taken us 4 hours or something. So, the advantage is, my point is, so if there is ever an issue, they can often either, like I was on a Loire Valley once, the water's very low. We drove to the excursion. Remember, we had an hour bus ride to get the excursion and back, but we got to see the sites, or they sometimes even have moved people to different ships. So there are ways around it. This is an interesting question, actually, Tom. Good point. Did you have any issues filming in Egypt? I heard they are very strict, even for using a cell phone. So, Tom, I was very concerned about that because on the UK Foreign Office site, it warned a lot about filming in Egypt. So I actually spoke to the guy, the head of the cruise manager, and he basically said there's a couple of things: is don't film any person of authority like police, security checkpoints, anything like that. Don't film around the airport, because there actually was some tourists, plane spotters ended up finding themselves in prison. So be very cautious filming around even airports, even though I did film little clips and stuff. So be very cautious. It was more of an issue in Cairo that I was a little bit more cautious around filming. So very much just filming the attractions and almost making a show of making the point that I'm filming. But I did actually only ever take out my phone and my little DJI Osmo Pocket, the little one. I didn't actually take either camera where I might have used more of a tripod and stuff. So absolutely, you need to be very cautious about it. And as I mentioned, you might have heard earlier, even taking binoculars out was an issue. So absolutely, you have to be really cautious. So I was very clear of, if the Sphinx is over there, I'm filming the Sphinx. I'm not filming behind me, whatever. Because
and would you not have taken a big flashy camera?
I definitely would not have taken a big flashy camera out. So there was one guy on the trip, Frank, who was a big photographer. He had a nice DSLR, and I guess he was also very cautious about kind of what he was doing. But I certainly filming would have been, but it was very else. He takes his camera out, taking a picture of the Sphinx or whatever. But you do have to be cautious, and I was very aware of being cautious. I mean, they did remind us a couple of times when we were at various checkpoints. Don't get your phone out to film anything at this point, because it is going to be an issue. David, with an annual travel insurance package, is it also good to get the cruise lines? No, I mean, obviously, I'm not a big expert in travel insurance, but a travel insurance policy, if you've bought one like I've done and you've done, which includes cruise cover, that's what it says. Make sure it includes cruise cover.
Which is normally an optional extra.
It's normally optional. Some you pay a little bit premium on, But make sure you've got cruise cover. You don't need the cruise line insurance on top of that. Thank you very much, Bruce, for the Brucey bonus or whatever it's called. Joanne. Oh, so hi there. Good to see you. So Joanne was actually on the Amber Waterways trip the week before me, so it was giving me little insights and tips. And I think Jolene had a great time as well. So good to see you here. Thanks very much for joining. And thanks for the pre-tips. It's quite nice actually having someone on the week before me. It was a bit like, I guess people use me a lot for is like getting little tips and things. So we're heading close to time. So let's do one more quick question. Elaine, hi there, Elaine. Good to see you. Elaine's a regular. Have you sailed around Vietnam and Taiwan? Yes, we have.
Yes, we have.
So we've done that. We've done that. It's two separate trips. One we did on the Queen Mary 2, which we did Vietnam. And we did Taiwan when we did Queen Elizabeth, when we did as part of the Japan trip. Both of those were amazing.
Amazing places.
The one thing I would say with Elaine is because we were on the bigger ship, we were a little bit envious when we were in Vietnam of Silver Sea, because the smaller ships sailed right into Ho Chi Minh City, into an area called Saigon, whereas we were quite a long way.
Yeah, we're like an hour on a bus.
It was a good hour on a trip to get in. And in Taiwan, when we went, I'm trying to remember the name of the port, but that was a bit of a drive. It was not a very nice port, but it wasn't that far. But all the ships got there. We loved it. There's fascinating cities.
Taiwan was amazing. Yeah,
Taiwan was amazing. Taipei 101, and beautiful city. There was all that area because, of course, I've got the big area. Remember with the big museum. Telling us a story about how they broke away from China and set up Taiwan. Really interesting. Vietnam, of course, is fascinating. So, yes, really, really good thing. Right, so we've churned through time. Loads of people have been here. I didn't get to answer all the questions. I will look at the questions as I always do and try and answer many of them, either in little shorts or comments, or build them into the videos that I'm making. But thank you very much, Mark, for joining me.
Good to see everyone.
I will be back next week with a live stream. I'm thinking the next weekend. As you know, I've been switching over between Saturdays and Sundays based on travel. I've seen more people actually get to join on a Sunday, so I'll look at those. But there will be a live stream next week, so keep an eye out for that. The video for this week is out. It's proving quite popular, which is where I take a look at things I've learned from cruising ultra luxury and discussing around whether I think ultra luxury is good value for money, considering when you top up going premium, whether it's Norwegian or Caribbean, if you add everything up, an ultra luxury cruise costs the same. So is it worth going or not? So you'll find that on the channel right now. So thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of the weekend and watch the videos, and we'll see you next week. Cheerio.